Good evening, I'm Jamie Young. Emmanuel International Canada links caring Canadians with churches worldwide to transform lives in the most desperate places, bringing hope and healing to communities, families, and individuals. Here to discuss how they carry out that mission is Richard McGowan, the Executive Director of Emmanuel International Canada, Paul Burton, who worked in Ethiopia as a relief worker, and Paul Crow, who worked in northern Uganda. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you very much for being on the show tonight. Richard, what is Emmanuel International?
Emmanuel International is a Christian mission organization, and its headquarters are in Stouffville, right at Kennedy and the Stouffville Side Road, and we've been there for nearly 35 years. We started in 1975 by a missionary by the name of George Middleton, who came back from Ethiopia, and that was around the famine area at the time, and he went across Canada and he spoke to about a number of people, and he had 100 go back to Ethiopia with him to help with the famine.
Okay. I'm going to go Paul B and Paul C, if that's okay with you guys, because we've got two Pauls on the show tonight, folks. Paul B, what type of work do you do, or does Emmanuel International do out in the world?
Well, they do relief. They respond to emergencies that come up, like, for example, Haiti. They don't only do relief, though. They also are involved in the rehabilitation. So after the initial relief efforts, they'll take on that. And then they look at long-term as well, where they do development. As well, they address the spiritual matters of people's lives as well.
So some of the unfortunate things is if something goes very wrong, if we have a disaster, you folks are involved.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Now, how do you get involved with this, Paul C? How do you get involved with this? Do you just go into the country or go into the area where there is a problem, or is there a relationship established beforehand?
Well, mostly we go into the areas where we have work. So if there's a disaster in that area or close to that area, we have people on the ground who are either missionaries or national workers that can check it out and then bring reports back to us or to constituents and say, okay, here's what we need to do, and we can put a plan right in place almost immediately.
Just like Haiti. I was actually in Antigua at the time, doing some work there with the Moravian Church, and it was devastating to hear about what happened there. And we actually on Antigua didn't feel it, but we were very close. We as an organization have been working in Haiti since the late 70s, so we had people already there working. We also had a team that came down from Canada within about 2 days. So we were one of the first organizations that actually got onto the island there to help. And we raised a substantial amount of money. And the first phase was just food and tents and tarps. It was really neat because I was there a few months after it happened. And outside the pastor's house, there was about 1,500 people just living in tents. Really? And they only lived there because they knew the pastor would get food for them. So in the evening, after they've eaten, the noise totally changed. There was laughter, there was kids playing soccer, and of course the girls watching the boys play soccer, which was quite neat. So we do help, and we try to help as much as we can.
What's it like, though? And again, I've never experienced this. I've never, other than what we see on TV, Paul. What's it like to show up to one of these sites after there has been a disaster and try to roll up your sleeves and do something that's going to help?
Yeah, I'd have to say there's a lot of mixed feelings, and it can depend on the situation. When we had people go into Haiti to start off with, we had one of our veteran missionaries go in. He'd been with the organization over 30 years. He had never seen anything like it. He was in shock, but it depends on the situation, and as well the fact that you're not living in it, you're a little bit removed from it, and you have to respond. But it can have effects, and it can certainly have long-term effects as well.
Is there things that EI does to help you folks or relief workers, the psychological end of it, or training in the first place to go in and help these folks out? Paul?
We do have training for missionaries that come on board.
Yeah.
Short term, it's a little bit harder. Most countries that we work in, there is obviously a cultural barrier that you have to get through, first of all. And then just seeing the poverty and the problems that communities face each day sometimes can be very hard to handle based on our culture.
Okay.
And so we have a plan going in, and then we have an exit strategy coming out where we talk to the people, and we have a plan of hopefully helping them think through and talk through what their experience was.
We usually send people into, let's say, Tanzania. Let's say, just pick that one country, and they do two things. One's cultural learning, and then the other is language. So sometimes they're in a town where they, for 3 months, to learn the culture and the language before they go out somewhere else into the country. So to send people into disasters, we try to rely on missionaries that have come home and are ready to go at a phone call, really, because I remember in 1986 I got a phone call, could I go to Mexico, because they had the earthquake there, and I was down there within about 4 days with about 4 other men, and it was hard. It's not easy. You see, like in Haiti, when I went to see Haiti, there were like 5, 6, 7-story buildings that had just collapsed on itself. And people said, no, there's still people in there. And that was like 3 months later, 2 months later. So it's not for everybody, but very rewarding when you have food to give to somebody, clean water to give to somebody, and you can see it on their faces, and that's rewarding enough.
The spirit of the people that you're going in to help, like you say, your organization is faith-based.
Yes, definitely.
And some of the information I've read on that organization, it's very strong with that. You're not going into the best places in the world to start with. And they've already had, and I don't mean they're not good places, I mean they're very depressed places, a lot of poverty, a lot of sickness, a lot of issues there, and then to have something else on top of that, how do you keep the spirit of those people up?
Very simple, because they say the safest place in the world is where the Lord wants you.
Okay.
So that's how we deal with it. And you can go.
But how do they deal with it?
How
the people themselves, the people that have been affected?
It's like me growing up in London, England, with 10, 12 million people, then coming to Toronto where there's only 1.5 million. You're brought up in different cultures.
Okay.
And that's probably the easiest way to say it. I mean, everybody in poverty do not want to be in poverty, and we help where we can with finance businesses that go very well. So after a disaster, we try to help as much we can, and then we try to help again in trying to set them up with how to make money.
Paul, like you want to say something to that?
Yeah.
Well, I was just saying that we're looking at it from a North American perspective. They're looking at it from the situation they're in, either in the Philippines, Haiti, Malawi, wherever. And their perspective is different than ours. So we go in thinking we're really going to help these people, and in actual fact, we are going to help them, but they actually show us a spirit of, let's get this done. They're actually some of the people that are much stronger even than us, and they really show the resilience in doing what we were doing, and yet they're the ones that we're learning from, because they have the strength to keep going on.
I want to keep on that. Like, as you say, we go in, or you go in, your group, or anyone else from North America that views these things on TV, because that's usually what we find out in the newspaper. We view it from our perspective. But really, at the end of the day, I guess it must be, how long does it take you to really start to see things through the eyes of the people that you're trying to help? Is it something that's automatic, or is it something that comes with time, experience?
No. I think Paul can answer that probably better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to see it through their eyes, it takes a long time. But certainly, in what we've seen, is they have survival skills that we in North America can't even imagine. That's what I've seen. They've been able to respond to disaster much better. I don't know if you remember back in August 2003 when the power went out in this area. Well, people were going kind of crazy here, and they were really stressed out. And I mean, that kind of thing there wouldn't even phase.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
So we we try to help as much as we can, and we work through the local churches. So if we have to leave or our program finishes, the local churches have been working with us, so they just keep on with the programs.
Now that's again a lot of the work. You don't go unless we spoke
Yeah.
this before the show. You don't go unless you're invited.
That's
It's
right.
not a case you don't walk in and say, "Okay,
Yeah.
we're here. Let's help." You want to
Yeah.
make sure that they want you there in the first place.
That's very true. Yeah, they say it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
So if an organisation knows in a developing country knows a little bit about us, they could write to us, or they know somebody who knows us. They will ask, "Can we come and help?" And then we try to put together programs for them. Microfinancing is very big at the moment. And in the Philippines, let me just share with you, I have this little purse that some of our people are building or making, and it's very simple. It's in the Philippines, they have this thing. If you're from the Philippines, you've probably seen it. It's 3-in-1. It's coffee.
Okay.
And when I was there just about a month ago, I loved this stuff. I had it 3-4 times a day, and it was really neat.
It's not good for your blood.
I don't think there's any infringement right here, folks, with Rogers TV, but
basically it's milk, sugar, and the coffee.
yep, right there.
And then they cut these into strips, and they make purses, big handbags. In Uganda, Paul, you share with.
Yeah,
Please do.
these are these are actually glossy magazines, and they cut them into strips, and the color is the natural color of the magazine. So then what we use this for, the ladies, these were HIV/AIDS people with HIV/AIDS
Yeah.
or widows. They come together in a group and they start rolling these and they talk, and
Okay.
and so it was an opportunity to come together as a community, and so after a while they rolled up enough of these that they put them on a string and then varnished them, and they were able to sell these. Yeah.
So it really becomes not only are they finding time and a way to use a product like that up, but it's the social aspect of what
yeah.
they're
We
doing.
use it as it's a way to make money, but it's also a way to, because it was in northern Uganda, as you know, there's
Yeah.
been big talk about the LRA and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But it was a way of getting people together to talk and to get them to realize, okay, we can survive this, we can move on, we can start to rebuild our community, we can rebuild our lives. And so the process, one of the projects we did was this little project. And so we buy the beads, bring them back to Canada, we sell them, and then the money goes back to them to keep the project going. And
Now we've talked about Haiti, obviously, and that's the one that sort of really still sticks out. But there's other disasters that happen in other parts of the world. You've been in Malawi, you've been in the Philippines, you've been in Uganda, North Uganda,
northern Uganda.
Northern Uganda. What are some of the issues that you're facing there, or you're walking into in those particular areas?
Well, I would maybe let Paul answer that, but because he was the director there while I was there too. So
You can start off. Go ahead.
I would say the issues that we face up in northern Uganda were mostly related to the problems with the LRA. As you know, in 2006 there was a tentative agreement made, and he left and went to I think, and so basically there was this gap now. What do you do after 20-some years of war or abduction and whatever we call it? And so we as an organization, with the help of our partner with the Anglican Church of Uganda, we set up certain programs. One was a peace type of program where you just come in, there was a counselor, and you talked.
Okay.
And you worked things through that way.
Okay. I'm going to hold you right there. I want to continue this when we come back, and we'll be back right after this.